I'm James Himm Mitchell, and this is your Week in Tarot starting February the 15th, 2016. So stay tuned. And here we are with the cards on the table, and the deck assisting me for this week's reading is the Fairy Tarot cards by Doreen Virtue, Radleigh Valentine, and Howard David Johnson. And the reason why I'm using this deck again this week is because it went over so well in last week's reading that I figured if it's not broke, don't fix it. So once again, these are the Fairy Tarot cards by Doreen Virtue, Radleigh Valentine, and Howard David Johnson. So as I do every week with these general readings, I'm taking the deck in hand and I'm shuffling the cards and I'm asking the question, what do we need to know about the week ahead? And as I shuffle, I'm looking for cards to stick out, as these are the cards that the angels, the fairies, and spirit wants to be in the reading. So the first card always represents the beginning of the week, and the second card always represents energy toward the middle of the week. And getting a cue to use this as the last card, and then the final card represents the end of the week. So now taking a moment and making sure that they are all in view. Okay, I'm happy with that. Alright, so I always start the reading off by looking at the card on the bottom of the deck. And this week we have the Two of Summer. So now this is an interesting card coming off the heels of Valentine's Day, because the Two of Summer is a card that represents partnerships and relationships. The Two of Summer usually for me is a card that suggests we're in that stage of the relationship where we're getting to know the other person better. This is a growing sense of intimacy card. So for some of us watching this video, if you have recently met someone, this is a nice sign for you to continue to get to know that person, getting to know that person better. If you are in an existing relationship, this is the same thing, but it says that you are growing a deeper sense of intimacy within that partnership or relationship. And if you are single, then this is an opportunity for you to get to know yourself better. Like I said, this is a card about intimacy, and so intimacy can be into me, see. So it's about you taking the time to get to know yourself better, especially if you are desiring to be in a relationship. I'm a big believer in that the more that you love yourself and the more that you are aware of how you operate in relationships generally speaking, but how you operate and how you move through the world, the better that you know yourself, the more self-aware you become, you attract somebody who gets to know you and gets to understand you better. And also with the same level that you take to understand yourself, you will also take the time to get to know and understand someone else. So I said relationships and partnerships, and now that could be, doesn't necessarily have to be the romantic variety or anything of that nature. It could just be that you are being given a message from the angels and the fairies to just pay attention to how you relate to other people this week. So again, this is a Two of Summer. It's about relationships and partnerships and taking the time to get to know other people better, but also be mindful of the relationship that you have with yourself, because that is very important too. The other thing that's just coming to me that I want to point out with this card, when we're talking about spiritual growth and development, which is one of my favorite subjects, is that relationships can serve as the fastest way for an individual to grow and develop spiritually. Because this card here, the Two of Summer, would suggest that relationships and partnerships, and like I said, relationships and partnerships of all kinds, anytime you relate to another person, this has an opportunity to have a mirroring effect. What it is that people will reflect or mirror things about you to get your attention that you wouldn't get any other way. So be mindful of how you're relating to people this week, or when you're relating to people this week. Be mindful of the things that maybe irritate you, annoy you, upset you, because that is something that the other person is creating an opportunity for you to see that exists within you so you can work it out. The 2 is a number of balance, and so it's just like relationships are helping us come into a greater sense of balance within ourselves. So that is the 2 of summer. Oh, the other thing, they're telling me to go back. The other thing about the 2 of summer, if you are in an existing relationship that is experiencing a challenge, then this card is encouraging you to find a way to work towards a sense of reconciliation. I'm looking at the bottom line of the card. It says, don't give up. Your relationship can be healed. Okay, now they told me I can go on. So now, the card at the beginning of the week, this is the 4 of autumn. Okay, so when the 4 of autumn comes up, and it's very nice that the angels and the fairies guided me to read the last line of that 2 of summer card, because 4 of autumn is a card that can suggest wanting to hold on to something. So if it is that you're experiencing a relationship challenge or a relationship issue, then this card is asking you to consider what would you need to do in order to hold on to that, because this card is about holding on to something. Now, it could also be that the challenge could be that you're being asked to look at the idea of holding on. If you're holding on because you are not secure, you're not feeling safe, you're thinking that the relationship is making you feel safe and secure, that might be something you want to look at and examine. The other thing could be is that you have to be mindful of the idea of being too possessive. That's the word that's coming to me, because the 4 of autumn is a card that represents possessions. And so you don't want to look at the other person in the relationship as, a possession, some property, something that you have to hold on to that way. So you could be mindful of one of the issues that may be needing to work out could be either your idea of the other person being a possession, or that the other person could be coming across as being too possessive and you're having to deal with that. The other thing about the 4 of autumn, which has nothing to do with relationships, this may be like a business partnership or something of that nature. It's about building a firm financial foundation, because I always see this card as, the retention or saving of money. So if that is a concern, this card is a nice card to have, because it says that you are working towards building a firm foundation. Now, that could also be if you're in the throes of a new relationship just starting out, then it's saying too that this is a nice card to have in that regard, because you are building a nice foundation for that relationship to develop. The other thing, I'm looking at this card and I'm seeing the image of the fairy, and on this side she is elegantly dressed, she looks very lavish, but she's looking in the mirror and she sees her reflection as being impoverished. She's very drab in the reflection, she's very drab, so it could be like, how could you may have everything that you want in life, but you may still be looking at yourself in a way that is not the true reflection of who you are. So it could be you're being asked to, if you think that you are dull and drab and dreary, then you may be asked to kind of change that. How can you see yourself in a way that's more the truth of who you are? It could be like, you're overlooking your own sense of beauty, your own sense of elegance, your own sense of refinement, and how can you change that? I'm always looking at this, it's like sometimes we may believe that what we see in the mirror is the truth, but I'm always playing what if when I get this card. What if that this is actually the physical world, and she's looking at her reflection this way? Why, we could look at it and say, well, she's looking at her reflection and this is what she sees, but what if it's the other way around? That's why I'm saying that. Spirit sometimes can see us in a way that we cannot see ourselves. So how can you tap into that? One of the things that may help, since I talked about the 2 of summer being a card of mirroring and reflection, then the 4 of autumn could be asking us to do what I call mirror work. And it's not something that I came up with. I actually got it from Louise Hay. And so sometimes when we're not feeling so keen on ourselves, or we're working on loving ourselves more deeply so other people can love us and so we can be more loving towards other people, mirror work is asking us to stand in front of the mirror and just simply say these 3 words, which are very challenging. It's going to sound easy when I say it, but you say, I love you. And as you do that, see how that makes you feel. What thoughts come up? Do you feel okay with that? Does it make you feel uncomfortable? Because it could be saying too that may help change your image. The more that you tell yourself that you love yourself and there's no negative talk inside your head, you don't look away from your reflection, you stand there and you really look at yourself in the eyes and say to yourself that you love yourself. So that may be something else that's helpful for the week. But at the beginning of the week, really pay attention to your sense of safety, your sense of security, making sure that you have material resources, holding on to what you've got, that kind of energy. But also too, in terms of relationships, are you holding on to a relationship that may be not serving you and supporting you, but because you feel a sense of safety and security in that, and you don't want to let it go because of that? Or that you're holding on too tightly and you may be coming across as possessive rather than, honoring the other person. You're holding on too tightly. So that's the 4 of autumn. In the middle of the week, we have the 9 of winter. Okay, so now this is a card that if you are holding on to something too tightly, this may be the reason why. The 9 of winter is a card that we get when we are stressed, when we are worried, when we are anxious about either something that we're going through or something that involves another person. The first 2 words on the card read Unfounded Fear. So what this is that it's a thought or a concern that is running through your head again and again and again. And sometimes I call this card as about like letting your imagination run wild and letting it get the best of you. It's about jumping to conclusions and making assumptions, because on some level there's a blank. Whenever I have created an assumption, it's because there was some piece of information that I didn't know and I didn't have. And so what the mind does, because the winter represents thoughts and mental activity, what the mind does, it wants to fill in the blank. So what it does is it creates a story or it creates an assumption because it needs to have the blank filled. But it may not necessarily be the truth. So, we're running off on something that may not be the truth because we have just needed to fill the blank with some space, fill it with something. So again, this card is about being worried, being stressed, being anxious. It could also be, that you're tormenting yourself in this regard. So it's about the fear is getting the best of you, but it's unimagined. It's not built or based in reality. Again, it could be like this false sense of seeing something. Again, like she's not seeing her reflection the way it's being projected. So it's just something. The issue here is about not seeing something as it really is. The card reads, focusing on the worst case scenario and allowing worry to grow out of proportion to the problem. So that is the energy of the 9 of winter in the middle of the week. But remember, if you're getting to that, if you're worried and stressed and anxious about something, but you don't have all the information, then you're being asked with this card is, don't create a story, don't create an assumption, get the facts, and take whatever action you get once you become informed of what the facts are. So I'm seeing that. And then the end of the week, we have the 5 of winter. So winter is the ruling suit. So we have here, an issue concerning thoughts, ideas, communication, possibly, especially with the 2 of summer being a relationship-oriented card. There may be a challenge here. Whenever I get the 5 of winter, I know this to be true, and especially with the way we may relate to people, especially with the 2 of summer serving as a foundation card. The 5 of winter is always about, for me, it's about setting boundaries. Whenever the 5 of winter comes up, it's like we may be experiencing in a relationship by the end of the week a sense of being defeated, humiliated, embarrassed. This is a card that can suggest communication issues where we're bickering and arguing. for me, the energy of that kind of dynamic, the bickering and the arguing, is that somebody in the conversation wants to have the last word. So there could be like, a sense of gloating, a sense of wanting to have the last word, the final say so, that kind of energy. But it doesn't serve anyone in the end. There's an expression about creating a win-win. Sometimes this card is about a lose-lose. No, there are no winners in this scenario. There are no winners. Everybody falls short. Everybody comes up with some kind of loss. So this card here could be about, like I said, setting boundaries. And so someone may have to, by week's end, draw a line in the sand and saying, okay, I've had enough. I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. I'm going to change the energy and the dynamic, because the number 5 is a number of change. And here's the thing, and that may be what you may need to do. You may need to set a boundary. You may need to draw a line in the sand, and then you have to maintain that. Chances are, if people cross boundaries, it's because we have chosen to cross a boundary first, and when people see that we cross our own boundaries, they don't honor them. So you're being asked, if you're going to set a boundary, and if you're going to maintain it, then you have to be mindful of not crossing the boundary first. Because when you do that, you give license for the other people around you to not honor the boundary because they see that you're not. There's a saying in relationships is that we teach people how to treat us. And so if we don't honor our own boundaries, well then we're teaching people not to honor them either. So be mindful of, by week's end, is about how are you communicating with people. If you're finding yourself in a space where you are having lots of arguments, lots of bickering, lots of fighting, why is that? If you're feeling that you need to have the last word, why is that? The other thing with the 5 of Winter is that we may get to a place where we may have to just let go. There's a saying that the better part of valor is to walk away from a fight. So this card may be asking you is to not engage. If somebody's coming at you and you don't like what they're saying and you don't like the energy, and if you can find the way to just walk away and disengage, then walk away and disengage. Don't stay engaged if you don't have to. That's the other thing. And since there are 2 winter cards here, Archangel Michael is a great archangel to have assisting us when we're having communication issues with other people, because what may need to happen, especially if we need to walk away from a situation, if we need to forfeit something, if we need to cut our losses, then Archangel Michael can help us by cutting the cords that keep us energetically connected to people, situations, circumstances that no longer serve and support us. It could be, I'm looking at the energy of the 9 of Winter facing this card. It could be there's a lot of worry, stress, or anxiety because we know we need to set a boundary with somebody. We know we need to stand up for ourselves. We know we may need to walk away from a challenging relationship, but we're worried and stressed out about how we're going to do that. If that is the case, then again, call on Archangel Michael to give you the safety, going back to the 4 of Autumn, the safety and the security and the protection, because Archangel Michael is the protecting angel, to give you that sense of safety, security, and protection, as well as providing you the next step of action and then giving you the strength to do it. So I'm seeing that this has the potential to be a little bit of a challenging week. I'm not going to kid you with the energy of the 9 of Winter and the 5 of Winter. It started off good with the underlying energy, but I'm seeing a shift. But the shift is in how you're perceiving the situation. Winter, as I said, is about our thoughts and ideas. And so it starts with the way we think about the situation that we're in. And, if we're having a challenging time, Louise Hay would say, choose a different thought. Esther Hicks, who works with Abraham, would say, choose a better feeling thought. Don't leave yourself in the stress and the worry, because worrying about something doesn't change it. All it does is keep you mired in the situation. So you could say, okay, change your focus from the problem to the solution. Okay, when you're mired in the problem, you can't see the solution. But when you change your focus to being solution oriented, you can see the solution. So these are our cards for the week. The next thing we're going to do now is we're going to look to see what major arcana card is going to serve as the overall lesson for the week. And so to determine what the major arcana lesson card is for the week, I'm going to take the numbers on all the cards. So the 4 of Autumn, we have 4, and then we have 9 of Winter with 9, so 4 and 9 is 13. And then 5 of winter is 5, so we have 13 and 5 is 18. So the 18th major arcana card in the deck is the moon card. And if you've been a regular viewer of my weekly readings, you notice that we get the moon card as the lesson card quite often. So the moon card, and here it is a card that, again, it kind of mirrors exactly what the 9 of winter below it or beneath it is. And it's a card about looking at what it is that we might be fearful of. This card usually suggests that this could be a very emotionally challenging week, because it talks about sensitivity. So we may be feeling really sensitive. Usually I see this card when we're going through a lunar phase, like either a new moon or a full moon, and we just had a new moon last week, so I know that isn't applicable here, but it could just be the idea of being really sensitive on an emotional level. We're being asked with the moon card to always honor and go with our intuition or our instincts. So if intuition is a word that's too woo-woo for you, then it might be like, trusting your gut, going on your instincts, that kind of energy. But we're being asked to, whatever you look at, your internal guidance, your GPS, that kind of thing, you're being asked to go with that and trust that this week. But I'm getting the sense that, this is going to be a very emotionally charged week, and so we're being asked to honor our sensitivity, and be mindful of, in light of the 9 of winter and the 5 of winter, be mindful of what your triggers are, because there is a great likelihood that people will trigger you, or that you will trigger other people. And it will be, sometimes the energy of it is not like people will deliberately do it. People unconsciously do it because the moon represents the unconscious or the subconscious. So it may be even that people are not aware that they're triggering you, or that you're not aware that you're triggering them. But things will come up to the surface, because this is about things coming up to the surface, so they can be looked at, because again, the water on the card represents reflection. And so it's about taking the time to look at what comes up, reflect on it, so it can be healed. Things come up in our lives because they're getting our attention because of two things. And I'm going with this because the moon card is also a dreams card, and also so is the 9 of winter. So if you are a dreamer, you may have dream guidance that helps you this week. But if you don't, it carries the same energy. Things come up so they can be healed and our lives improved as a result, because that's what dreams do. Dreams function to serve as reminders of things that we need to address so we can heal our lives and improve our lives. But all situations are designed to do that, whether you're receiving the information about it in an unconscious state, which is dreaming, or that you are awake and alert and moving through the world. Everything is designed to show you aspects of yourself that need to be healed so your life can be improved. And the other thing about this card that I want to point out is that if you notice, the moon is here in the sky, but in the reflection, it's on the other side. It's not behind her like it is here in the upper part of the picture. So this card again is reinforcing the idea with 9 of winter that some things that come up may not be an accurate depiction. It may not be the truth. It may be how we're filtering it, because as people, we have our own filters. We filter everything in through the way we think and the way we feel about it. So be mindful of the way that you're taking in the situation. You may be filtering it, and as you're filtering it, it may not be the way it appears. So be mindful of the way things show up. It may not be based in reality. It may not be based in the truth, and your job is maybe getting to the truth. So I'm seeing that with the moon. I'm asking, what else do I need to say about that? No, I'm feeling like that's really clear. So I'm just going to read the card. It says, powerful intuitive epiphanies, letting go of worry and fear. This is a big week here, especially with the moon and the 9 of winter being the center card. It's about really working on the things that you are worried and fearful about. And then the last line is understanding the truth of a situation. So everything is designed for you to see the truth in it. And so this has been our cards for the week. Summing up, we have the 4 of autumn. Again, this is about building a foundation. It's about holding on to things, but also be mindful of, are you holding on to things too tightly? You know, and if you're doing that, are you doing it out of fear and worry, which is a nice way to segue into the Nine of Winter? Are we holding on to something because we are worried and fearful about, you know, our own sense of safety and security? So the Nine of Winter is asking us in the middle of the week to really look at what it is that we are fearful and worried about. Is it based in reality, or are we just running a story in our heads and creating an assumption? And if we are, how can we get to the truth of the matter? And then going to the Five of Winter at the week's end, we may need to set an important boundary with other people. We may need to walk away from a situation that is no longer serving and supporting us. We are not getting anything out of it. We need to be mindful of, in our relationships, going back to the energy of the Two of Summer, in our relationships this week, be mindful of the words that we are speaking. If we are in the cycle of bickering and arguing and wanting to have the last word, we really need to take a look at that, because it's really not about the other person. It's really about us. Because remember now, the mirroring effect. Everything that we experience in a relationship is actually mirroring something about ourselves that we need to see. So if you're feeling like, I need to have the last word, I need to, you know, kind of gloat, that kind of energy, why is that? Take a look at that. This is a week, I'm really feeling like this is a strong week of, even though we may be experiencing things through other people, this is a week of really taking the time to do some self-reflection. So this has been your week in tarot. I am James Himm Mitchell, and I want to thank you for sharing this space with me this week in this week's video. I want to take a moment and acknowledge the new subscribers to my channel. Over the course of the week between last week's video and this week, I had a number of new subscribers, so I want to say thank you all. If you have recently subscribed, I want to welcome you to the channel, and thank you for blessing me with your presence and creating time for me in your world. And I also want to acknowledge all my existing and long-term subscribers as well. I am so grateful that you all continue to come back to these weekly videos. I'm so happy to hear that you are finding value, that you are finding meaning, that you are resonating with these weekly readings. It just warms my heart, because that is the reason why I do what I do. And I'm just so thankful that you all have chosen to let me be a part of your world, and that you have chosen to step into mine. So again, this is James Himm Mitchell. I'm signing off, and I'm wishing you a tarot-tastic week. And until our next video together, take care.